Jerome Walcott.
We bringing it home with Jerome Walcott. We bringing it home with Jerome Walcott. We bringing it home with Jerome. We bringing it home. We bringing it home. We bringing it home. Representation you want, representation you get with Jerome Walcott. With Jerome Walcott. Ready to bring it home as the bell ring for the final lap with Jerome Walcott. With Jerome Walcott. He is the man for the people willing to lend a hand. While others prove incapable, he is the one who can. We want him to bring home the bacon. He is the anchor man for the elections. With Jerome the baton. We bringing it home with Jerome Walcott. We bringing it home with Jerome Walcott. We bringing it home with Jerome. We bringing it home. We bringing it home. We bringing it home.
So sweet, I love
Very
it.
humble and easy going, a caring, honest, hard-working man. Is Jerome Walcott. Is Jerome Walcott. A great listener, a deep thinker, always have a well-thought-out plan. Is Jerome.
Good evening to you, the wonderful folk of Oistins, and especially you of Christ Church, and of course, my friends in Christ Church South. It is a wonderful feeling to be here this evening, to see so many of you on a Friday evening. This evening, as we speak here, our opponents have gathered to launch their manifesto in St. James. And reports indicate that they seem to be hiding in their cars. But that is not my message this evening. 5 years ago, the Democratic Labour Party came to the people of Barbados. And they spoke about pathways to progress. And they promised you, that they would bring good governance and transparency to the affairs of this country. They promised you that they would bring in representation to you by a group of people that would be caring, committed, and clean. You have had this experience for 5 years now. They have had their time, and now you, the people of Christ Church, and indeed the people of Barbados, this is your time to assess and to judge them and to determine if you want to continue with the Democratic Labour Party and more of the same, or you want to work towards a new beginning and a new tomorrow with Owen Arthur and the Barbados Labour Party. But I want to first of all deal with the matter of representation and the promise of caring and committed representatives. And I want to start, as you would appreciate, in Christ Church South. And I want you to be clear as you listen to me in your assessment of the type of representation you have had from Mr. Boyce over the past 5 years. And first of all, we contest an election, a government is formed, and members of the parliament are elected. At the end of that election, it is expected that that person, whoever he or she is elected as the representative, not for BLP or DLP supporters, but for all constituents of that constituency. And in this regard, Mr. Boyce can be judged and found wanting. Too many people complain that when they visited him to seek assistance, rather than rendering assistance or listening to the complaint, their first question was, are you a B or a D? That is wrong. A caring representative is one that listens. Mr. Boyce never did. A caring representative is one who takes time and shows concern about the issues which constituents come to speak to him about. Mr. Boyce never did this. A caring representative would not, if someone came to see him and the chair collapsed and they fell, a caring representative would be concerned if that person sustained an injury, and indeed, if they did not seek to render assistance, would certainly seek thereafter to call, to inquire, to find out if something was amiss. This was not done by Mr. Boyce. Mr. Boyce, too often people have said, was not interested in them and would tell them that he has no time for them or no jobs for them. This is wrong. And so I want you to reflect, especially you, the people of Christchurch South, in terms of representation. All that he has to show in 5 years of representation to you is that he was able successfully to change the name of the Oystins Fish Market. And 2 days ago, to affix a plaque to the market in honor of persons who had died, who were drowned at sea, after promising you that a monument was going to be erected. 2 days ago, going to Oystins to affix a plaque. 4 years after promising you that a new crane will be installed and the issues with the fishing boats will be a thing of the past. Promising you that year after year after year. No action. Do you think that that is representation? Do you really believe that Mr. Boyce should have the temerity to come and ask you for a vote? Don't you think that you have had enough of him? They spoke about governance and transparency. They said that we were thieves, that they were going to bring cleanliness to the affairs of government. And we can go through every ministry, one by one, and point to the various issues that show you that they did not often adhere to these principles that they spoke to you about. Public works and transport. Why is it that he is referred to as the Minister of Transtech? Transport Board has UCAL. Why is it that Mr. Boyce has to find himself at Transtech every Friday? Is it to check on buses? Does he have an office there? But these are the questions that you need to ask. He needs to tell you, because they're supposed to manifest good governance and transparency, why over $200,000 was spent in the procurement of uniforms for the Transport Board drivers. And if the first tendering process was so flawed that when it was awarded, all of the uniforms were rejected. That is the sort of governance that I'm speaking about. And I go further. I said in every ministry you can find it. Look at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital and the Ministry of Health. Over $500,000 missing. at a time when that institution is short in basic supplies. And I'm not speaking about equipment. I'm not speaking about drugs. I'm speaking about basic things. Alcohol, cotton wool, gauze, gloves. Over $500,000 missing. And I have been asking from Friday night for the minister to tell you, because he likes to talk about everything. Talks about everything. He needs to tell you what is the relationship between the person who has now been in prison for this missing sum and him. He needs to tell you how that person got the job at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. He needs to tell you what is the relationship between that individual, his father, and the Democratic Labour Party. And he also needs to tell you why that young man lost his job, his previous job, and how he was given the job at the QEH. Because they promised you good governance and transparency. He needs to tell you, the Minister of Health, about the procurement practices within the QEH and who is related to whom. And if, in fact, he has relatives within the procurement department of the QEH. These are the sort of things he needs to tell you. He also needs to tell you, how is it possible in 2013 for a Minister of Health to declare Alliance Eye Care Center open and speak on television for almost 15 minutes, extolling the virtues of this Alliance Eye Care Center? That will mean that Barbadians will no longer have to travel to Cuba, and that people will come from throughout the region to have eye surgery and eye care done there, but omit to tell you this week that the water supply in that same eye care department is contaminated. He needs to come clean. He needs to deny tonight if, in fact, the water in the eye department has not been found to be contaminated with an organism called Legionella that kills people. These are the things he should be talking about. But they come to report to you and tell you about changing windows and building a fountain, creating a canopy over the entrance. You said it. And outfitting a cafeteria. Not building a cafeteria, outfitting a cafeteria for a cost of $2.4 million. And they tell you about transparency and good governance. Do you think they should even be talking to you? Do you think that you should be listening to them? Don't you believe that you have really had enough of them? But I go on. I go on. In the drug service, he spoke about bringing soundness to it and saving the government of Barbados over $12 million. But he never stopped. He never told you what was the real cost in terms of morbidity and mortality. How many persons have died in this country because of the draconian changes made to the Barbados Drug Service? But he is concerned about saving $12 million. And I think you all know why. Because Donville Innes is concerned with everything else. Busy is the word you call it. They say it's like salt. In everything. But I go on because we are speaking about good governance and transparency. We are speaking about good governance and transparency. And they're yet to tell you, and Minister Eswick calls himself a pit bull, not a word out of him about the $900,000, almost $1 million sent from the Water Authority to acquire equipment. Not a single screw delivered. Auditor General spoke about it. And Mr. Pitbull, not a word. Not a word. He is yet to tell you about the issue of the contract for the new Water Authority headquarters. And we move on. Michael Lashley, and they tell you about good governance and transparency. And he is up and down and across. And they call him the 5 and 10 man. I don't know if it is $5, 500, or 5,000. But across this country, they call him the 5 and 10 man. And not a word about Coverley in the entire campaign from the Democratic Labour Party or Michael Lashley. But ladies and gentlemen, we have come to you promising you a better way, a better tomorrow. And a number of the speakers before me have spoken to various aspects of our manifesto. I want to assure you, first of all, the folk of Oistins, that the new Barbados Labour Party government is committed to continuing the work which we started with the Oistins complex, with the Bay Gardens, with the changing of the roof of the Oistins Fish Market. And you heard Kerry speaking about what was needed in terms of the standards required for the exportation of fish to Europe. We are committed to continuing those improvements to the market for the benefit of you, the people of Oistins. We also plan to acquire and install that crane that has been promised to you for the past 4.5 years by the Democratic Labour Party. In terms of the drug service, one area that I'm extremely concerned about because of the undue hardships to Barbadians, especially the elderly, a new Barbados Labour Party government, we see as a tenet of our policies that the poor, the elderly, the disabled, they must be provided for. And we pledge to you in our manifesto that we will ensure that those categories of persons will be allowed to get their medication free of cost from the pharmacy of choice once the Barbados Labour Party is returned to office. We are concerned about a number of other areas and aspects of the health system. We recognize that nurses go often beyond the call of duty. Many of them work double shifts and have been treated to abuse over the past 5 years by the present minister about laziness and absenteeism. We recognize that the conditions are harsh and difficult. Hence, the high frequency of resignations and migration of nurses. And in our manifesto, we pledge to look at the entire remuneration package for nurses so as to encourage them to stay in Barbados and deliver their services and treat the Barbadian patients rather than going overseas. This is another commitment. We also recognize the scourge of chronic diseases, hypertension, diabetes, cancers, obesity. And we left in 2007 a policy position and a proposal to remove VAT and certain duties on diabetic food, on cereals, on low sugar, low salt, low fat substances. And in our manifesto, we pledge that as soon as we are re-elected, these measures will be introduced. We promised, before we demitted office, we started the extension of opening hours at polyclinics, 2 polyclinics in particular, the Randall Phillips and the Spicestown Polyclinic. The Democratic Labour Party promised you that they were going to extend the opening hours at every single polyclinic across the country. 5 years later, not a single polyclinic has extended its opening hours by a single hour. In our manifesto, we pledge to extend the opening hours to all polyclinics across Barbados. We go further. We pledge to you that we will outfit polyclinics so that they can provide x-ray services, ultrasound services, asthmatic treatment, so that a number of you can have investigations and treatment performed at these polyclinics across the country, so reducing the load on the Queen Elizabeth Hospital and certainly assisting you. This is another pledge. These are the sort of things we speak about in the Barbados Labour Party when we speak about a new dawn and a new tomorrow. We promise and we tell you that we are committed to the construction of a new general hospital. But we recognize, of course, that at these times, it will be difficult initially. In our manifesto, we pledge to you that as soon as circumstances improve, we will start and we will build a new state-of-the-art general hospital for Barbados. The ambulance service. Many of you knew that we did tremendous work in terms of the training and the upgrading of the ambulance service, and certainly in terms of the decentralization, when we placed ambulances for the first time in Arch Hall. We pledge to you in our manifesto to ensure that the ambulance staff have adequate accommodation and that they are provided with adequate numbers of ambulances. And we also pledge in our manifesto to continue that decentralization. Ladies and gentlemen, this is but a snapshot of some of our plans and promises to you in our manifesto. We in the Barbados Labour Party, unlike the other side, see this as a pledge to you. We will do these things once elected. And so I want to encourage you to ask all of you to ensure that across Christchurch, in all 5 constituencies, Christchurch West, that you vote for Maria Agard, Christchurch West Central, that you vote for Margot Durant-Callender, Christchurch East Central, that you vote for Desmond Sands, Christchurch East, that you vote for Wilfred Abrams, and of course that you vote for me in Christchurch South to ensure that Owen Otter and the 5 of us are elected to be part of that new government to be formed after the election and to bring a new dawn and a new beginning to the people of the Barbados for generations to come. I thank you and good evening.
We bringing it home with Jerome Walcott. We bringing it home with Jerome Walcott. We bringing it home with Jerome.
Friends, the next parliamentary representative in Christchurch South